Hello, my friends. I'm here again with another little book, something that I treasured many years ago. I got this one from my mum back in 1979, so I've had it more than 26 years, and it's in a series called the Silver Torch series. It's called Granny's Wonderful Chair. It's book number 58 in what was the Silver Torch series, retold from the story by Frances Browne, and it's illustrated. It was published by Collins in what they call their clear type press. This is a first impression. It was published in February of 1947. And in the contents, we see 13 little chapters. The story of the chair, the Christmas cuckoo, the merry leaves, in search of fortune, the wonderful chair again, the story of Fairyfoot, Princess Maybloom, a new story, the story of Merrymind, Breaking the Spell, and the final 3 chapters are Sunflower is Praised, Child Charity, and Prince Wisewit Comes Home. Let's start and see how we get on today. First, though, I'm going to pour myself a coffee so I can join you and enjoy what I'm going to read with a coffee close by. Good, that's me sorted. Now I can focus on reading to you. Chapter 1, The Story of the Chair. Once upon a time there lived a very good and pretty girl called Snowflower. No one had ever seen her frown or heard her say a cross word. She lived with her grandmother, Dame Frostyface, who was very cross at times, although she was always kind to Snowflower. They lived together in a little cottage built of peat and thatched with reeds on the edge of a great forest. A cat and 2 hens were all their livestock, and their only good piece of furniture was an armchair. It had wheels on its feet, a black velvet cushion, and many carvings of flowers and fawns on its back. Dame Frostyface sat spinning on the chair all day, while Snowflower gathered wood for the fire and looked after the hens and the cat. Then, when work was over for the day and the fire blazed brightly, Dame Frostyface set aside her wheel and told Snowflower a wonderful story. One morning Dame Frostyface put on her bonnet and said, "My child, I am going to pay a visit to a friend who lives far away. You must be a good girl and look after yourself. The hens will lay eggs for you, and there is barley meal in the barrel. If you are lonely, lay your head on the cushion of the armchair and say, 'Chair of my grandmother, tell me a story.' You must never ask for more than 1 story in a day, and if you want to travel, you only have to sit in the chair and say, 'Chair of my grandmother, take me such a way.' It will carry you where you want to go, but remember to oil the wheels before you set out." Having said this, Dame Frostyface went away. Snowflower gathered wood for the fire and looked after the hens and cat as usual. She baked herself some cakes of barley meal, but when evening came she began to feel lonely. Then she remembered her grandmother's words and, laying her head down on the cushion, said, "Chair of my grandmother, tell me a story." Scarcely were the words spoken when a clear voice from under the cushion began to tell a wonderful story. After that, Snowflower was lonely no more. Every morning she baked a barley cake, and early every evening the chair told her a new story. Time went on, and troubles fell upon Snowflower. She forgot to clip the hen's wings, and they flew away into the forest. The cat ran off after them, and then, before long, All that was left of the barley meal was a couple of handfuls. "I wish grandmother would come back," sighed Snowflower. "I shall starve soon unless I do something. Perhaps I could go to her and she will tell me what to do." So next morning at sunrise, Snowflower oiled the chair's wheels and baked a cake out of the last of the meal. Then, taking the cake with her, she sat down in the armchair and said, "Chair of my grandmother, take me the way she went." The chair gave a creak and began to move out of the forest. The chair gave a creak and began to move out of the cottage and into the forest the very way Dame Frostyface had taken. Snowflower was amazed at this way of travelling. The chair rolled along at the rate of a coach and six, and never stopped the whole day. In the evening they came to an open space where 100 men were hewing down trees with their axes, and 100 more were chopping them into firewood. 20 men with wagons and horses were carrying the wood away. Oh, chair of my grandmother, stop," said Snowflower, and at once the chair stood still. Seeing an old woodcutter, Snowflower said, "Good father, why are you cutting all this wood?" "What an ignorant girl you are," said the man. "Have you not heard that King Wingwealth is to give a feast on the birthday of his only daughter, Princess Greedelind? It will last 7 days, and this wood is to roast the oxen and the sheep, the geese and the turkeys." Snowflower, who was tired of barley cakes, could not help wishing that she might join the feast, so she said, "Chair of my grandmother, take me to the palace of King Wingwealth." Away went the chair, and soon reached the gates of a great city. It was the richest city in all the land. From far and near, merchants came to buy and sell, and it was said that people had only to live there for 7 years to make their fortunes. But, rich and grand though the city was, Snowflower thought she had never seen so many unhappy and discontented faces in the streets. It had not been so in the old days when King Wingwealth was young, and he and his brother Prince Wisewit had ruled the land. Then there had been no illness or unhappiness in the land until one day Prince Wisewit went alone into the forest and never came back. The king sent out his guards, who searched near and far for him, but all in vain. King Wingwealth grew lonely in his great palace, so he married a princess called Wantall and brought her home to be his queen. This princess was neither lovely nor good. She was very greedy, and the more she had, the greedier she became. At length the king and queen had a daughter called Princess Greedelind, and now the whole city was preparing a feast for her birthday. There was a great stir in the palace, which was so large that there was a room for every day in the year. All the ceilings were made of silver, and all the dishes of gold. Night and day the palace was guarded by 500 armed men. When these guards saw Snowflower in her chair, they ran to tell the king, and the whole court came out to see her. When she saw so many fine lords and ladies, poor Snowflower felt ashamed of her bare feet and shabby gown. But at length she took courage and answered all the questions they asked her about her wonderful chair. The queen and the princess thought the chair was not fine enough for them, but the king thought it might amuse him when he was out of spirits. So he sent Snowflower to the kitchen, where the servants jeered at her because of her rags. Oh, delicious. There was no room for her chair except in a dusty corner behind the back door. Snowflower was told she might sleep there at night, and was given some scraps to eat which the cook had thrown away. Next day the feast began. Crowds came in coaches, on foot, and on horseback to the palace. Never before had Snowflower seen such roasting and boiling. There was There was music and dancing and gay dresses. Yet in spite of all the good cheer, there seemed to be a great deal of ill humour in the palace. Some of the guests were angry because they thought they should have been in grander rooms. Others were vexed to see finer dresses than they wore, and the servants were not pleased because they did not get enough presents. It was not surprising that, by the end of the day, the king's spirits became very low. His favourite page, who always stood behind him, saw this and reminded him of the little girl and her chair. "Bring her in," ordered the king. "I have not heard a story for many a year." So a message was sent to the kitchen, and Snowflower made herself as smart as she could, seated herself in her chair, and said, "Chair of my grandmother, take me to the banquet hall." Away the chair marched in a courtly fashion out of the kitchen, up the staircase, and into the banquet hall. All the lords and ladies and the grand people of the land were gathered there. There had never been such a fine company in the palace since the days of Prince Wisewit. All this reading's making me very thirsty. King Winwealth sat on his ivory throne, dressed in a robe of purple velvet and gold. The Queen sat at his side in a robe of silver cloth and pearls. Princess Gridelind was finer still, because the feast was in her honour. She wore a dress of cloth of gold, clasped with diamonds. 2 waiting ladies stood on either side of her to hold her fan and handkerchief. The 2 pages stood behind her chair. In spite of all this grandeur, she looked very ugly and spiteful, for both she and her mother were very angry to see a barefooted girl and a shabby old chair in their grand banquet hall. The table was still covered with golden dishes and fine things to eat, but no one offered Snowflower a morsel, so, having made a humble curtsy to the company, the poor little girl sat down on the carpet, laid her head on the velvet cushion, and said, "Chair of my grandmother, tell me a story." To the surprise of everybody, even to the Queen and the Princess, a clear voice from under the cushion said, "Listen to the story of the Christmas Cuckoo." Chapter 2. The Christmas Cuckoo. Once upon a time, in the middle of a bleak moor, there stood a village. All the people in it were poor. Their fields were barren, and they had little trade. The poorest of all were 2 brothers called Scrub and Spare, who were cobblers. They lived in a little hut which had no windows in it, so they had to keep the door always open. The roof leaked, and the brothers could not afford enough wood for a fire. The village people were very careful with their shoes, so that poor Scrub and Spare had little custom. But they managed to scrape up a living with the help of a small barley field, until one day a new cobbler came to the village. He had lived in the big city and told everyone that he had made shoes for the Queen and princesses. His tools were sharp, his lasts were new, and he set up a stall in a neat cottage with 2 windows. The villagers soon found out that one of his patches were worth 2 of the brothers. So before long all the mending left Scrub and Spare and went to the new cobbler. That winter the brothers were very poor. When Christmas came, they had nothing to feast on but a barley loaf, a piece of stale bacon, and some small beer. Worse than that, the snow was deep, and they had no firewood left to make a blaze. Beyond their hut was a moor which had once been a forest. Great roots of trees still lay there, half buried in the snow. Spare looked out from his hut and saw one of these near the door. "Come, brother, help me in with it," he said to Scrub. "Poor as we are, there'll be nobody in the village with as fine a Yule log as ours." So the 2 brothers set to work and soon had the log blazing and crackling in the fire. In great glee, they sat down to their feast and forgot their poverty in the cheerful glow of the fire. But suddenly, out of the blaze, they heard cuckoo, cuckoo, as plainly as if there had been a bird in the fire. "What's that?" they cried, gazing at each other in surprise. Suddenly, a large grey cuckoo flew out of the fire and perched on the table before them. "Good gentlemen," it said, "what season is this?" "It's Christmas," said Spare, greatly surprised. "Then a Merry Christmas to you," said the cuckoo. "I went to sleep in the hollow of that old root one day last summer, and did not wake till the heat of your fire made me think it was summer again. But now, since you've burned my lodging, let me stay in your hut until spring comes round. I only want a hole to sleep in, and when I go off on my travels, I promise to bring you some present for your trouble." "Stay and welcome," said Spare. "I'll make you a warm hole in the thatch. But you must be hungry after your long sleep. Here is a slice of barley bread." The cuckoo ate up the slice of bread and then flew into a snug hole which Spare scooped out for him in the thatch of the hut. Scrub was not so sure about taking in the strange cuckoo. He was afraid that it would bring ill luck. But the days passed and he forgot his fears. Then, after the snow had melted and the warm sun began to shine, the cuckoo woke up once more, ready for his travels. "Tell me what present I shall bring you at the end of the year," he said, "but first give me a slice of barley bread to eat." Scrub was angry at his brother for sharing their precious store of bread, but Spare cut a slice for the cuckoo, who ate it up with good appetite. "Now, what shall I bring you?" he asked. A greedy thought entered Scrub's head. "Good cuckoo," he said, "bring me some diamonds and pearls." The cuckoo shook his head. "These are hidden in the hearts of rocks and the sands of rivers," he said. "I know only those things which grow on the earth. But there are 2 trees growing near the well at the world's edge. One of them is called the golden tree, for its leaves are all of the beaten gold. The other is always green like a laurel. Some call it the wise tree, and some the merry tree." "Good Master Cuckoo, bring me a leaf off that tree," begged Spare. "Don't be a fool," said Scrub. "Dear Master Cuckoo, bring me the leaves of beaten gold." Before another word could be spoken, the cuckoo flew away, shouting its spring cry over the moor and meadows. That year the brothers were poorer than ever. Not a single shoe came their way to mend, and if it had not been for their barley field, they would surely have starved. The only bright spot in their lives was a maiden named Fairweather, whom they had both loved for 7 years. Neither Spare nor Scrub knew which one she favoured. Some days she smiled on Spare, and some days on Scrub, but the brothers never quarrelled over her. They sowed their barley, and now that they had no shoes to mend, they worked in their richer neighbours' fields to make a scanty living. And so the year went round. But by the end of it, the brothers had grown so poor and ragged that even Fairweather thought them beneath her notice. On the 1st of April, they heard a knocking at the door and a voice crying, "Cuckoo, cuckoo, let me in with my presents." Spare ran to the open door, and in came the cuckoo, carrying a large gold leaf and a fresh green one in his mouth. "Here is your present," he said, giving the gold leaf to Scrub. "And this is yours," he said, giving the green one to Spare. "Give me a slice of barley bread, and then I must go and tell the world that spring is here." This time Scrub did not grudge the thickness of the slice of bread, for he was well pleased with his gold. "See the wisdom of my choice," he cried, holding up the large golden leaf. "As for yours, Spare, it might as well have been plucked from any common hedge." "Good Master Cobbler," said the cuckoo, "if your brother is not satisfied this time, he can change his mind, for I go on the same journey every year, and I will bring you presents again." "Dear cuckoo, bring me another golden leaf," cried Scrub greedily. But Spare said, "Be sure to bring me one from the merry tree." and away flew the cuckoo. Scrub was very angry with his brother. "You're a fool to throw away such a fine chance of getting rich," he scolded. But Spare laughed at him and said there were more important things in the world than gold. "You must be mad," said Scrub, and at length he grew so angry with his brother that he said he would live with him no longer. He picked up his tools and his golden leaf and left the hut to tell the other villagers what a fool he had for a brother. And those are the first two stories from this beautiful little book about Granny's chair. Where are we in the cover? Let's have a look. Let's find that nice Granny's wonderful chair. So those are the first two stories, and I'm going to read you some more. So do come back and we'll go through them together. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed those stories.